Brethren, we thank the Lord. I would like to touch some few things. Normally, when you are to speak or share, someone normally asks you, what is the topic? It's customary to have a topic, but I will touch on it just briefly. We had a wonderful time at Simunya yesterday. The couples were gathered there, and we were privileged to be honored by the marriage ministry for organizing such a wonderful session. And it is plausible to all of you who did make time to go there. We were like angels in white. It was like a small heaven. It was also amazing to me when we drove out of Manzini to Simunya, getting into the highway. I really enjoyed the road. It's a bit bumpy though, uneven. If I was the engineer supervising it, I would have said something different. But I enjoyed the road. We were sure with Ketsiwe that we will get at Simunya in 45 minutes time because of the highway. Not knowing, and for me having not driven that road for quite some time, I was shocked that at some point somewhere, we had to get off the highway. Immediately we got off the highway, we had to go to the old road. I had driven that old road from 2000 to 2003 when I was working at Simunya. From enjoying a highway, cruising, when the highway disappeared from my vision, I had to go back to my old memory to say, on this road, where are the potholes? And the road is narrow. Then I said, here now I need to remember my old driving skills on such a narrow road. And there are goats and there are cattle on each side of it. Then you follow trucks, you have to slow down, you can hardly overtake. But the point I'm bringing in is that moving from a highway, immediately don't see the highway, you go back to old ways. I also enjoyed the scenery of our country. We have got a beautiful country, Bazalwane. Let us not forget that. Our country is beautiful. We might not realize it, but I can assure you we have got a beautiful country. The scenery we have, the mountains, the valleys, the flat plains, the trees, the rivers, the sounds of birds is just amazing. Just amazing. We are though living in a world that is troubled. If you are up to date with what is happening in the world, you can attest with me or agree with me. Just to cite a few things which I think you are all aware of. America is in trouble. They are currently undergoing their primary elections. The Democrats and the Republicans are in a fight of winning the Senate. And also some counties, who's going to be a governor in a particular state and all that. And all of that, apart from that, there are also critical issues. Issues of abortion. In other states, it has been legalized. In other states, it has not been legalized. There are these fights. On the other hand, America is troubled because of white supremacy. If you're a black man living in America, the people who are telling us are saying it's not easy when you are being stopped by a cop on the road. It's not easy. Now, the politics are such that there is fear of 2024, whether Trump is going to come back or not. There are those worries. If you put aside America, you go to Russia, we all know the story between Russia and Ukraine is not easy either. If you put aside Ukraine, you go to England, you find England being in crisis in terms of leadership. They had Boris Johnson leading. Quickly, Liz Truss came in. She couldn't last weeks. Now they have got Rishi Sunak, a guy who has got an Indian background, Now, the politics of England are saying, how can this be? It means a lot. I won't go into details because I'm being recorded. Economists are saying, you know, when you are looking at the economics of any country, if the GDP is not growing for 2 succession quarters, you are quickly retracting, going to a recession. The economists there are saying pretty soon, probably, Britain will be in a recession. The economic climate is not so easy. We are all being affected by high interest rates. If you had a bond or a mortgage in a bank paying for your house or for your car, if you had not fixed your mortgage in the beginning, you allowed it to fluctuate depending on the interest rates, you are in trouble. Inflation is affecting us because goods that you could buy easily in a shop yesterday, loaf of bread, things are going up, driven by fuel and energy crises, which are some of them spiraling out of Ukraine and Russia wars. If you look at Iran is in trouble. They are fighting. The human rights group are saying we have had enough. Ladies there who normally put these hijab scarves are saying no more. We want our rights. You ask yourself, what's going on in this world? You look at South Africa, our nearby country. They are going to the ANC policy conference now in December. The leadership, they are currently nominating who is going to be in leadership. I can call names, but I won't do that. Now, the concern from foreign direct investors is to say who is going to be in charge. What policies will be put in place for us to be in a position to invest? Remember, as Swazis, we are having a one-on-one Lilangeni to a rand. As the rand loses, we are losing. And we are also not spared inside here in the country. We have got our own issues. I won't mention them, you know them. There is high unemployment. Things are rife. It's difficult. Now, besides that, as the world is progressing in this manner, we are challenged as Christians to say, where do we stand? When the foundations are being shaken, where do you stand? Now, what is worrying me the most is not the politics, is not the economics of the countries, is not the shaking that is happening in there, but it is the philosophies that have infiltrated the church, unaware. I will touch on a few of them before I read the scripture so that you can go with me. Those who look at philosophies that are in the world would tell you that we have got the modern philosophies which started around the 16th to the 18th or 19th century. And then now we have got the contemporary philosophies, which I will touch maybe on 3, but I will delve on 1 because it is the one that I am fearing is going to lead us astray if we are not careful. Now, I have requested the colleagues to put up something there for me. I will tell you when you need to move the slides, or I can move them from here. I might just check if this is still working. Okay. Now, modern philosophy refers to the way of people gather and confirm information through direct experience and logic. Philosophy is characterized by focus on gaining knowledge, scientific issues through inquiry, rational logic, and skepticism and individualism. Now, if you look at philosophy, it's centered around information. To say, how did you gather your information? How did you validate your information? And using that information, when you analyze it, what is it that you can come up with and start to tell us that things are done like this? That is what philosophy is all about. There is what we call epistemology, which looks at those type of information to say what type of information it is, what are the sources, how can you separate information from opinion, so that you are aware that I'm not using opinion now, but I'm using information. There is a difference. Now, there are two schools that are driving modern philosophy or contemporary philosophy. The first one is rationalism. I will just read you the definition quickly. Irrationalism is the theory that knowledge comes through reason. Reason is the source of knowledge and justification. So it means that if someone says, I've got knowledge, that knowledge comes from reasoning, using your mind to think through something and find argument to justify that type of knowledge. That is rationalism. And then you have got empirism. Empirism is a theory that states that knowledge comes only or primarily from sensory experience. The theory emphasizes the role of 5 senses in obtaining knowledge. Empirism, it's your experience the thing first before you can say you have got knowledge. You cannot just think it through having not experienced it. So they differ from the rationalism or the ones who believe in rationalism to say, no. You cannot say you have finalized your information, you have got knowledge, having not experienced that thing. Now, the third one I want to touch on because of time is humanism. Humanism is a progressive philosophy of life based on a profound respect of human dignity and the conviction that human beings are ultimately accountable to themselves and to society for their actions. It is a secular worldview that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical and meaningful lives. Humanism, it's your no. Allow me to live the way I want to live. Allow me to think through something, experience something, and just that's it. I'm accountable to myself. Now, there are few fundamentals of humanism which I want to touch on briefly. Humanism is a response to the widespread demand for an alternative to dogmatic religion. Humanism, it's no. Religion is fixed. Religion is not allowing flexibility. So I am not comfortable in staying in religion because it's not allowing me to explore myself. I now need an opportunity to explore myself, discover myself, live the way I see fit because I am accountable to myself. Now, humanism values artistic imagination and recognizes the transforming power of art. You'd realize that these days, there is more emphasis on art, how we express yourself. People who do art will tell you that I'm expressing myself. Through music, through anything that allows me to express myself, the way you see me, how I'm dressing myself, how I'm portraying myself. This is who I am. Don't tell me that I am a male or a female. There is a move now that says this thing of saying I'm taking male, I'm taking female is no longer right for some other people. Because I no longer belong into that category. I'm exploring myself to be different. I saw another person in that same space dressed in a strange way. I'm saying strange because I'm belonging to another category as well. Otherwise, if I was not belonging to another category, I wouldn't say it's strange. To him or her, probably is normal. But maybe the normal there is not normal to me. So those are the dynamics that have confronted us in these days. Now, there are questions that we need to ask and answer. I know these are sensitive issues, but they are confronting us. What do we say or respond as a church when we are confronted with homosexual issues? Where do we stand? I listened to one very powerful preacher, I won't mention his name. He was asked to say, can you go to a gay marriage if you are invited to? Then he started to speak in tongues. One of the things that he said is that if they are close friends to me, I will go. Now, the people who were asking him the questions were saying, can you still go and rob a bank if those are your friends? Where do you draw the line? Then he spoke in tongues. Can we go together in the book of Exodus, chapter 32? We're going to read verse 1 to 5, and then jump to 19 to 26. Exodus chapter 32, 1 to 5, then 19 to 26. Do we have someone who's going to read for us?
Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 to 5. When the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. Come on, they said, make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses, who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So Aaron said, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Aaron saw how excited the people were, so he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. Verses 19 to 26. When they came near the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and he burned with anger. He threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf they had made and burned it. Then he ground it into powder, threw it into the water, and forced the people to drink it. Finally, he turned to Aaron and demanded, what did these people do to you to make you bring such terrible sin upon them? Don't get so upset, my lord, Aaron replied. You yourself know how evil these people are. They said to me, make us gods who will lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So I told them, whoever has gold jewelry, take it off. When they brought it to me, I simply threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses saw that Aaron had let the people get completely out of control, much to the amusement of the enemies. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and shouted, all of you who are on the Lord's side, come here and join me. And all the Levites gathered around him.
I would like to use this passage as a point of reference in terms of what I've just introduced today. We are picking the story where the Israelites are still on the journey to the promised land. Moses, the servant of God, had to go and meet God in the mountain, Mount Sinai. If you read from chapter 25 up to 32, where we have just read, it tells you the discussions and what God was saying to his servant Moses. That includes what God said, how the Ark of the Covenant was going to be built, how the Levites were going to serve him, how they were going to be dressed, and many, many, many more things. He was there for 40 days and 40 nights. The camp was down at the mountain foot. Now, since Moses was out of sight for 40 days and 40 nights, they went back to their old memories, like I did when I was leaving the highway back to that old road. The lack of the visibility of a leader makes people to go back to their olden ways. Now, what also we gather here is that though the children of Israel were in a journey to the promised land, they were in it, but not for it. Simply because when they lost sight of Moses, they then said, what's going on here? Their memories were quick to then say, since you came out of Egypt, who really took you out from Egypt? It's not to say, brethren, that they forgot the mighty works they saw. They did not forget that they did cross the Red Sea, but they attributed that to a God they knew. Hence they came to Aaron to say, we do not know what has happened to this fellow. Here we are. Do something. Give us some gods that we can worship. Who has kept us out of Egypt to be where we are? The other thing is that they were not related to Moses. And you cannot blame them for that. Remember, Moses left when he was 40 in Egypt. And he went to be in the wilderness under Jethro's leadership. When he was 80, he had to go back. There was 40 years of absence of Moses in Egypt with the children of Israel. He now comes and say, I have got a word of God that let's go out. So they were not relating to Moses as such. And Aaron, his elder brother, could not relate to Moses as well. Could not understand what was going on. No wonder when he was under pressure, he succumbed. Because if he knew what was going on here, he would have stood to then say, no, we can't do that. The earlier verses here, it's very clear that before Moses went up to the mountain Sinai to meet God, he spoke to the camp to then say, legally, if anything you want to do, go to Aaron and Hur and speak to them. So legally right, they were correct to go to Aaron. But it was the message they were carrying that was not aligned to the journey. The point I want to bring, brethren, is that when Moses came down after a long discussion with God to then say what's happening there down at the camp and all that, I won't get into that. Moses came down carrying the tablets on which were written the 10 Commandments. The word tablet is not new. The scriptures knew about tablets a long time ago. So don't think technology has come with nice words of tablets. The scriptures are tablets. And the God wrote on tablet first before any one of us wrote on tablet. Now, he took the tablets. On it were written the 10 Commandments. In realizing what was happening in the camp and the sinning that they have done, he threw the tablets down and they were broken. He spoke to Aaron as we have read, but where I would like us to focus is the words that Moses spoke to the camp. Then Moses stood in the gates of the camp and said, whoever is on the Lord's side, come to me. And all the sons of Levi gathered together to him. When we are faced with challenging times, as I have given the narrative, the question I'm posing to you, on which side are you? But for those who are on Lord's side, come to the Lord's side. When you are confronted to then say, where do you stand with matters of sexuality in these days? On whose side are you going to stand? But I can advise you that you can stand on the Lord's side. Remember, the scriptures are saying, the Lord's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. It is mistaken to compare what we do as humanity to what God is saying, because He's operating at a higher level that we do not understand. Therefore, Some of the things that God will say in His word, it doesn't matter whether you understand or not, as long as you are in God's side. Because we are not called to understand things. We are called to go by faith. And faith is the substance of the things hoped for, the evidence of the things that are not seen. The rationalist will tell you that, allow me to think this thing through, to make sense of it. And the empiricism will tell you, allow me first to experience it, to then tell you, to say, this is the information I am gathering. And the humanist will tell you, allow me to live the way I live. Don't tell me about dogmatic principles of religion. Allow me to be free to be who I am. But are you on the Lord's side or not? For how long are we going to be tossed between two opinions? We need to choose to say, on which side are we? Our times that we are living in are different. If Peter stood on the day of Pentecost and said, this is what was prophesied by the prophet Joel, that in the last days I will pour out my spirit. If then it was the last days, how much more now? I would agree with the scholars that say it is the last of the last days. Now the problem, if you read from Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3, is that inasmuch as we are happy that the Lord is coming, the Bible says there, before the Lord comes, there will be great apostasy. The abandoning of the faith by many. Now, to give you a picture, when you are driving in a highway and you are supposed to keep on the highway and you are not sure, and the roads start to be making, they call it a fork, meaning there are roads that are just taking off on either side. If you are not aware, you can take a fork or a left drive one way or the other and realize late that I was supposed to be there. Simply because as an engineer, when we design these roads, particularly when it comes to high speeds, we do not make sharp curves that you can quickly realize that I'm taking a curve now. If you're on a high-speed road, the taking off is very gently. You realize after a while that, oh, I'm leaving that one, I'm leaving that one, I'm leaving that one. But if you are not aware, taken by the philosophies of this world, you will be part of the great apostasy. Simply because the philosophies have infiltrated the church unaware. This is the danger we are living in these days. But we are here to remind each other that let's remain on what today's cultures look at it as primitive, look at it as inflexible, as not accommodative to the lifestyle of this world. That look at it as something archaic, old-fashioned, keeping with times. That's what they say. But are you on the Lord's side or not? Levi had to choose quickly that I am coming to be on the Lord's side. And there was a reason Levi had to do that. If I were just to remind you a bit, when Jacob came to age, he called his sons to bless them. They all came beside the bed to bless them. Now, when Jacob had to speak to Levi and Simeon, he was angry with them. He said, cursed be the anger of you, Simeon and Levi. What they had done, just to remind you, when Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, went into Shechem, she was raped. When Levi and Simeon heard of it, they plotted a plan to go and revenge. What they did was that they went to speak to the men to say, if you want this daughter, in order for you to be married to her, you must be circumcised. Men being men, they fell for that. They were circumcised. When they were in pain, in a process of healing, when they were in pain, could not walk, Levi and Simeon attacked them and killed them. And in the process, they killed the prince of Shechem. If you read the scriptures, they use the word oxen. But if you read under other translations, they make mention that the oxen was a prince. Jacob was angry because they did not touch base with him that this is what they wanted to do. He was angry because they misrepresented him to the Shechem people. Now, when it came to the time that he wanted to bless his sons, he remembered that these sons did something that I did not like. Then he did not bless them. And that affected the generations of Levi. When Levi got a chance to say who is on the Lord's side, they said, this time around I am not missing it. This time around I am the first one to be associated with the Lord's side. And he ran and saying, I am on the Lord's side. I am on the Lord's side. Is it not possible, brethren, that we can make up for our faults that we made in the past? When given a chance that, where are you? You can quickly say, I am on the Lord's side. I am on the Lord's side. These days, it is challenging us to say, on which side are you? On which side are you? On which side are you? Remember, it's not about understanding the things of God, but it's about believing them. Where God wishes, He will bless you with the understanding of the revelation. Then you will understand. But even if it doesn't make you to understand, but just believe. The book of Hebrews writes of others, men of faith, who believed in God. And some of them died having not seen what they believed. But the truth of the matter is that they believed. And it was a credit to them that they were men and women of faith because they believed. Now, to move on to the second part of the talk, when you have believed in God, you must learn to worship God in terms of who He is. What shall sustain us in these last days is to worship God, follow God, serve God, not according to what we think, not according to what we want, but because of who He is. The problem that maybe we have done in the church, we have said, come unto Jesus and get your things. We have said, come and be blessed. What if you don't get your things? What are you going to do? Are you going to leave? Surely you will leave because you were told to come and get your things. Now you are not getting the things. But if you came to worship God because of who He is, the things don't matter. Because you know whom you are worshiping. Can you look at Job? Job was a righteous man. There was no fault in him. The very things he had, God allowed that those things be taken. And they were taken. Really, really taken. I have realized some few days ago that I am not strong when things are being taken from me. Because as a family, we experienced one tragic where my sister's husband passed away. And I couldn't stand it when things are being taken away. But the question is, when things are being taken, can you continue to worship God? Or you will then say, because things are taken from me, I'm done. If that is the case, then you will be the statistics to the great apostasy, the abandoning of the faith of many. Remember, this will happen because the Bible said that before the Antichrist. In fact, it's the apostasy, rapture, then the Antichrist. Now, the point I want to also make on this one is that we have to worship God not because He's saying something. Sometimes it's nice to hear God speaking to you. But what if He doesn't say anything? What if he's quiet? He doesn't say anything. If you read Genesis chapter 16, Genesis chapter 16 presents a very precarious picture. Sarah says to Abram, sleep with my servant Hagar, or Hagar. She becomes pregnant. The last verse is, she bears a son, and Abram calls him Ishmael. Now, the Bible says Abraham was 86 years at that time when Ishmael was born. And the strange thing is that the last person in the family to speak to God or his angel was Hagar when she was out there. Abraham never spoke to the angel either. Now, the chapter ends with Ishmael being born, and the environment in the family is sour. And Abram is the head of the family. Now God is silent, is not saying anything. Chapter 17, verse 1. When Abram was 99 years, God comes to him and says, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be blameless. For 13 years, God is quiet. It's okay to be quiet when our parting was okay. There are no issues. But what if there were issues? Unsettled issues. Then you become quiet. How am I going to handle the situation? How should I continue? How should I understand what you are thinking? How should I get myself through this? And God was silent, was quiet for 13 years. A decade and 3 years. God is silent, not saying anything. Can you handle walking with God when God is not saying anything to you? We break these days to say, I have got a revelation from God. The Lord is saying this to me. What about you, my sister or my brother? Is the Lord speaking to you? But what if God is not saying anything to you? Does it mean there's something wrong? Does it mean you must now leave God? God is not accountable to you to speak to you anytime. He speaks when he wants to speak. And when he doesn't want to speak, he will keep quiet. Because he's God. He's not accountable to us, but we are to him. We must learn, brethren, to worship God for who he is, not because of what he does or for what he says, because what if he's silent? Does it mean your faith is less or what? If we measure ourselves with these standards, we will fall short. The part I would like to mention and move on to touch is the same thing that says, can you trust God when you do not know what's happening? Rationalists will tell you that I need to understand what's happening here to be able for me to make sense of it. What if things don't make sense? What if there is uncertainty? Like I have mentioned that there is uncertainty in the world. You do not know what China will do. You do not know what North Korea and the missiles they will do. You do not know what Ukraine and Russia will do. You do not know what's happening in America. You do not know what's happening in Iran. And now in Israel, we've got a new prime minister. Benjamin Netanyahu is coming back. He's going to form his new government. At least we must know about Israel, at least. At least the Manange World Cup, you must pray for Israel. Israel wins. The Bible says you must pray for Israel. And you must not pray for the Israel of the Bible because those are no more there. You must pray for the ones who are living now. When they are confronted with the Palestinians, you must take the side of God. I don't care if I understand anything, but because I believe in God, who said I must pray for these people, I will pray for them. Because I am on the Lord's side. You can say I'm wrong or right, but I am on the Lord's side. Now, uncertainty is a problem because uncertainty comes when you are expected to deliver something. It's okay when there is uncertainty, but you are not under pressure to deliver something. But it's a problem when you are confronted with uncertainty, you don't know what to do here or what to figure it out, and you have to make a call. For those who are in managerial positions or in leadership, you get into that position, in fact, they bring the difficult problems that they have failed to solve. Then they bring it to you with less information for that matter. and telling you their perspective of the matter, not of what really happened entirely, because they don't want to expose where they have faltered. Because you might be angry with them or discipline them. So they will tell you a narrative that will favor them and yet expect you to make a decision. Then you are faced with uncertainty. How do you deal with that? Now, as Christians, we need to learn to trust God when there is uncertainty. When unemployment is high, interest rates are high. In fact, from an economics point of view, the two do not normally go together. High inflation and high interest rates. They normally juggle to manage the other. But this time around, we too. Now, can we handle uncertainty as Christians in these days? When you are not sure, can you believe God while you are not sure of what's going on? This is the challenge I want to bring to us, Bazalwane. In these last days, uncertainty is becoming the norm of the day. Yet, we are supposed to serve and believe and walk with God. This is where we are. We have got no choice. But we are warned in this meeting to say, let us trust God despite, because He is God. The last part I want to touch on is that having gone through COVID, having gone through all the challenges we are experiencing in this life, we are at a juncture, Bazalwane, whereby we are expected to strengthen what remains. The truth of the matter is that we bear scars of the past, whether through COVID we lost our loved ones or whatever the case might be, and our faith was challenged. And we couldn't meet as we are meeting today. And we couldn't do a number of things. But we are here today. And we bear scars of the past. The point is that we now need to strengthen what remains. Strengthen your faith in the Lord. Strengthen your following in the Lord. Be on the Lord's side, even if it doesn't make sense. Strengthen that. Strengthen the gathering together of the saints. Strengthen the fellowships. Strengthen the prayers. Strengthen the support to other brethren. Strengthen what remains. They have remained. Strengthen them. So that together we can go together. And let us keep sight of Christ, who is the author and the perfecter of our faith. Because if we lose sight of him, like what the Israelites did, they lost sight of Moses and they went back to their olden ways. But if we keep sight of him, strengthening our relationships with him, then we will make it. He's going to strengthen us. He's going to lead us. He's going to stand by our side. Because he has committed himself to do that. I grappled with the scripture where Jesus is saying that those that the Father has given to him, he will not forsake them. I had thought it was meaning that Jesus is so attached to the people that the Father has given to him more than anything else. I then realized that the first point of call of Jesus was obeying the Father. Since these people came given by the Father to him, by looking after the people, taking care of the people that he was given by the Father, by so doing, he's honoring the Father. Because we have come through Christ by the Father's plan, we are sure that Jesus is with us, is going to walk with us. I sometimes pray that sometimes as Christians we brag. If you have been saved for some years, you then say, I've been walking with the Lord for 26 years. I mean, typically. It happens in the church. I do not know why we do it, but we do it. We boast as if it's our own doing. But the truth of the matter is, it's not. It's just by the grace of God. Now, Because in the process, you might claim when Aguti you were walking with God. But I would think probably at some point God was carrying you because you couldn't walk. And at some point I would think, this is now my rough thinking, that probably at some point he was dragging me because I was stubborn. Because he didn't want to let go of me. Because he's committed because of the covenant. So he had to do anything that he had to make sure he doesn't lose me. For us is then to strengthen the relationships we have with Christ. Strengthen what remains so that we can make it. Brethren, this is the scriptures that I thought probably we can remind each other today so that we can make it. Days are challenging, and as the scriptures have said, it will not get any easier still. So we cannot mislead ourselves that things will get easier. They won't. Let us just brace ourselves. And also is not to say that life will be easy. It will be tough. But we also now need to take our position to make sure that we are on the Lord's side. That's the first thing. You are on the Lord's side. When you are confronted with situations, I know as Swazis we are good with other things. We are good to say, I am a Swazi. But as a Swazi, are you on the Lord's side or not? And sometimes we pride ourselves with our cultures. Do our cultures make us to be on the Lord's side or not? If any culture, for that matter, does not make me to be on the Lord's side, thank you, culture. Because I am not on the Lord's side. When God spoke to Abram, he was Abram at the time, he said, I am El Shaddai in chapter 17, verse 1. El Shaddai means I am God Almighty. I am the all-sufficient for you. In short, God was saying, you need not to have done what you did because I was more than enough for you. But you have done that, but here you are now. I'm giving you another opportunity. Walk before me and be blameless. Bazalwane, I'm here to encourage each one of us to then say, can we pull up our socks to be on the Lord's side? At least. Sometimes I know some of these things don't make sense, but to me it does. If getting into heaven was like getting into a house and there was someone at the door, I wouldn't mind to be the last one, just to be in. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't rush to be the first one. Even if I'm the last one, it's okay, but I will be in. Can we not position ourselves to be on the Lord's side? Can we not position ourselves to worship God in terms of who He is? Because these other things that we preach about at times and all that, we need to be very careful, Bazalwane. Because I can tell you now, we will not only have what other preachers tell us that you'll get. They talk about cars, big houses, and all that and all that. Hey, when I believe I must say work, and God will bless the hands of my work. I will appreciate if I'm blessed, if it's God's way, but I must do my part. Bazalwane, as I end, may I just request that as a church, we are on the God's side, on the Lord's side. To me, this is the main thing. You are on the Lord's side. And from now on, you worship God for who He is. He is the Ancient of Days. He was there. He is here. And He's going to be forever and ever. He's our God who is here. Can I request the praise team to come up front here so that we can just sing and that we pray in the name of Jesus. And I would request that as a congregation we stand. Maybe My request is that as you stand, becomes your sign that I am the Lord's side. As Levi left the others and ran to Moses and say, I am on the Lord's side. Maybe you're standing, you can make it your prayer today that I am standing, Lord.